Before we begin, I need you to do something small for me. If you believe that one unexpected moment can completely change the direction of a person's life, then subscribe to this channel, because the stories told here are not just entertainment. They are emotional journeys, stories about temptation, loneliness, connection, regret, desire, and the dangerous moments where emotions become stronger than logic. And tonight's story is one I still struggle to explain, even to myself. My breath caught every single time his hands touched my skin. The room smelled faintly of jasmine oil and warm candle wax, the soft instrumental music drifting quietly through the bedroom like a distant memory. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows, creating the kind of atmosphere that usually calms the mind. But nothing about me felt calm, not anymore. Jake's hands moved carefully across my shoulders, strong and controlled, pressing deep into muscles that had been tight for weeks. Every motion was professional, measured, trained, precise. At least that's what I kept trying to tell myself. "Relax, Sarah," he murmured softly, that voice. God, that voice had changed over the years. It no longer carried the uncertainty of a teenage boy trying to find his place in the world. It carried confidence now, calm masculine certainty, the voice of a man who knew exactly how to take control of a room without ever raising his tone. I closed my eyes and forced myself to breathe slowly as his thumbs pressed into the knot beneath my shoulder blade. A quiet sound escaped my lips before I could stop it. Jake paused for half a second. "You okay?" "Yes," I whispered too quickly. "Just tense." His hands resumed their movement, sliding lower along my spine with deliberate pressure. Heat spread through my body instantly, dangerous and unwelcome. The thin sheet draped across my lower half suddenly felt too small, too fragile, too revealing. The room felt warmer by the second. "You've been carrying stress for too long," he said quietly. "Your muscles are practically begging for mercy." I tried to laugh softly, but the sound came out uneven. If only he knew what kind of tension was building inside me. Because, the truth was, this stopped feeling like an ordinary massage several minutes ago. Every touch felt amplified. Every breath felt louder. Every second stretched into something heavy with unspoken emotion. And somewhere deep inside myself, a realization had begun forming. Terrifying, undeniable, impossible to ignore. I was no longer reacting to him as my former stepson. I was reacting to him as a man. That realization alone should have horrified me enough to end this immediately. But I didn't stop him. And maybe that was the moment I truly understood how far things had already gone between us long before this massage ever began. Because feelings like this don't appear overnight. They grow quietly, slowly, in hidden moments you convince yourself mean nothing. Moments like late-night conversations in empty kitchens, shared laughter after painful days, lingering eye contact held just a second too long, comfort becoming dependence, dependence becoming emotional intimacy. And emotional intimacy, that was always the real danger. 3 years earlier, my life had looked completely different. At 42, I thought I understood exactly who I was. I taught art at Wellington High School during the week and spent my evenings alone in my studio painting until midnight. My divorce from Marcus had left scars I rarely admitted existed. 20 years of marriage reduced to paperwork, silence, and carefully divided furniture. The hardest part wasn't losing the marriage. It was losing the version of myself I used to be inside it. After the divorce, I promised myself I would never again become emotionally dependent on someone else for happiness. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. Morning yoga, weekend hikes, painting commissions, quiet independence. And for a while it worked. Then David entered my life. David was stability wrapped in expensive suits and polished confidence. A successful attorney with kind eyes and the type of emotional maturity that felt comforting after the chaos of my divorce. At least that's what I believed in the beginning. When he introduced me to his son Jake, I expected awkward politeness at best. Instead, I found someone who understood me in ways David never truly did. Jake was 20 when we met. An art student with striking blue eyes, messy dark hair, and a level of emotional depth that caught me off guard immediately. While most people glanced at my paintings and said they were beautiful, Jake actually studied them. He noticed details, emotion, meaning. We could spend hours discussing art history, Renaissance painters, abstract expressionism, color theory. Conversations that made me feel intellectually alive again. David often worked late at the office. Jake and I talked. At first it felt innocent, natural, comfortable. But emotional boundaries rarely collapse all at once. They erode gradually, almost invisibly. The first shift happened after David betrayed me. I still remember the night I discovered the affair. The cold, numbness that spread through my chest while staring at text messages glowing on his phone screen. Excuses, lies, hotel reservations, promises meant for another woman. I felt humiliated, disposable, like I had somehow become invisible again. David moved out 2 weeks later. And strangely, the person who stayed by my side through the wreckage wasn't my husband, it was Jake. Every evening he would show up carrying takeout containers and sketchbooks, refusing to let me isolate myself in grief. "You need to eat," he'd say firmly, or "You've been crying all day. Come outside for 10 minutes. Or sometimes nothing at all. Sometimes he simply sat beside me while I painted, filling the silence with quiet understanding. One rainy evening, we sat together on the living room couch, sharing Thai food while he sketched absent-mindedly beside me. "You never told me why you switched from art to massage therapy," I said softly. He smiled without looking up from the page. "Because I realized art heals emotionally," he replied. "But touch heals people physically and emotionally. I wanted to help people feel safe again." Safe. Funny how that word would later destroy my ability to think clearly around him. As weeks turned into months, our connection deepened in ways neither of us acknowledged out loud. He became my comfort person, the first person I wanted to talk to every morning, the last person I thought about before sleeping. And somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing him as simply David's son. Not intentionally, not maliciously, it just happened. The first moment that truly scared me came during a thunderstorm. The power had gone out across the neighborhood, leaving my art studio glowing only by candlelight. Rain hammered against the windows while thunder shook the walls around us. Jake sat beside me on the floor, studying one of my unfinished paintings. "Show me," he said quietly. I moved behind the canvas and guided his hand across the thick layers of textured paint. "Feel this," I whispered. The texture creates emotional depth. His fingers moved slowly beneath mine. "It's intimate," he murmured. The way he said it made my entire body tense. Not sexual, not yet, but intimate in a way that felt emotionally dangerous. Thunder cracked loudly outside, and instinctively I jumped. Without hesitation, Jake wrapped his arm around my shoulders protectively. "I've got you," he whispered near my ear. Those 3 words shouldn't have affected me the way they did. But they did, because for the first time in years, I felt emotionally safe with someone, truly safe. And emotionally vulnerable people are dangerous to themselves. They start confusing comfort with destiny, attention with love, emotional rescue with soul connection. I should have created distance after that night. Instead, I led him closer. Casual touches became normal between us, a hand lingering on my back, fingers brushing accidentally while passing coffee mugs. Long hugs that lasted a little too long. And every single time I told myself the same lie. This means nothing. But deep down, I knew better. Back in the bedroom, Jake's hands continued moving lower along my spine, pulling me violently back into the present moment. "You're shaking," he said quietly. I opened my eyes slowly. "I'm cold," I lied. His expression softened. "No," he whispered gently. "You're nervous." Silence swallowed the room. Heavy, dangerous silence. The kind where both people suddenly realize the truth at the exact same time. Jake's hands stopped moving completely. Then slowly, painfully slowly, he stepped around the massage table until I could see him clearly beside me. The professional mask was gone from his face now. What replaced it was honesty. Raw, vulnerable honesty. "We need to talk about this," he said quietly. Every rational thought in my brain screamed at me to end the conversation immediately. But my heart had already betrayed me months ago. "About what?" I whispered, though I already knew. His jaw tightened slightly. "About the fact that this stopped feeling innocent a long time ago." The air disappeared from my lungs. I sat up slowly, clutching the sheet against my chest. "Jake," he interrupted softly, "please don't pretend you haven't felt it too." My pulse thundered in my ears. "You're emotional because of the divorce," I said weakly. His eyes held mine steadily. "Then explain why I felt this before the divorce ever happened." That answer destroyed the final lie I'd been hiding behind. Because he was right. There had always been something between us. Something subtle. Something dangerous. Something growing quietly beneath years of shared conversations and emotional intimacy. "We can't do this," I whispered. Jake stepped closer. "Tell me you don't want me," he said softly. "And I'll leave right now. God help me." I couldn't say the words, because wanting him was no longer the problem. The problem was how deeply I already cared about him. And the terrifying part? I wasn't sure when it started, only that it was real. Jake reached forwards slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away. Instead, I leaned into his touch. The moment his fingers brushed my cheek, something inside me shattered completely. Years of loneliness, years of emotional neglect, years of pretending strength meant never needing anyone. Gone. His forehead rested gently against mine. "We don't have to decide everything tonight," he whispered, "but I need you to stop pretending this connection isn't real." Tears burned my eyes instantly, because for the first time in years, someone saw me completely, not as a wife, not as a teacher, not as someone trying desperately to hold herself together. Just me. And sometimes being truly seen is more intimate than physical touch could ever be. My voice trembled. "I'm terrified." "I know," he whispered. His hand slid carefully into mine. And despite every reason this was wrong, holding his hand felt more right than anything else in my life had for years. Outside, rain continued falling softly against the windows, while the world carried on completely unaware that inside this quiet bedroom, two people stood on the edge of a decision capable of changing everything forever. And neither of us knew what would happen next. The following weeks felt like living inside a storm we could no longer escape. At first, Jake and I tried to convince ourselves we could control what was happening between us. We agreed to take things slowly, to think rationally, to avoid making emotional decisions. But emotions don't disappear simply because people fear them. If anything, distance only made the connection stronger. Every glance carried weight. Every conversation felt intimate. Every moment apart felt unfinished. Eventually, we stopped pretending. Jake sat down with his father one evening and told him the truth. The fallout was exactly as painful as we expected. David was furious, shocked, hurt in ways I genuinely never wanted to cause. Words were exchanged that could never be taken back. For several months, neither of them spoke to each other. The art community whispered. Friends judged quietly. Some people disappeared from my life completely. But something unexpected happened too. For the first time in years, I stopped living according to everyone else's expectations. I stopped apologizing for existing, stopped shrinking myself to make others comfortable, and Jake never once let me face the consequences alone. Whenever doubt crept into my mind, he reminded me why we chose each other in the first place. Not because of rebellion, not because of secrecy or temptation, but because somewhere between loneliness, healing, late-night conversations, and emotional honesty, we had fallen deeply in love. Real love. The kind built slowly through understanding instead of fantasy. 2 years later, things finally settled into a strange but peaceful normal. David eventually accepted that anger would not change reality. Time softened the sharpest edges of betrayal. Boundaries were rebuilt carefully. Not perfectly, but enough to move forward. Jake opened his own wellness studio combining massage therapy and art rehabilitation programs. I continued teaching, while also exhibiting my paintings professionally again. And somehow, against every expectation, we built a quiet life together. Not perfect, not conventional, but honest. Sometimes late at night, I still think back to that rainy evening when his hands first touched my shoulders and everything changed. At the time, I thought the most dangerous thing in that room was desire. I was wrong. The most dangerous thing was feeling truly understood by someone for the first time in years. Because once a lonely heart experiences that kind of connection, it rarely wants to let go. And maybe that makes our story complicated, maybe even controversial. But after years of pretending to be emotionally numb just to survive, I finally learned something important. Love doesn't always arrive in the form people expect. Sometimes it appears quietly, in conversations, comfort, healing, and the one person who sees every broken part of you and stays anyway. And whether the world understood it or not, that kind of love changed my life forever.